Welcome back. And now for the news in detail, we start with the U.S. Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who are on their way to Ankara seeking a ceasefire from Turkey in northeastern Syria. U.S. President Trump, Turkey's President Erdogan and Russia's President Putin have also agreed to meet in Moscow on October the 22nd. The three leaders will discuss Turkey's military offensive in northeastern Syria and global concerns over the operation. Meanwhile, U.S. Senator Michael McCaul says he will introduce a sanctions package on Turkey for Syria incursion today. Earlier, Ankara said it is preparing retaliatory sanctions against the United States. In a related development, U.S. Congress has voted overwhelmingly to condemn President Donald Trump's withdrawal of the American forces from northeastern Syria. Democrats and Republicans banded together to approve a non-binding resolution by 354 votes to 60. The resolution states Congress's opposition to the troop pullback, saying Turkey should cease its military action in Syria. One of the President Trump's closest ally, Senator Lindsey Graham, said Trump's decision will allow ISIS to re-emerge. Meanwhile, U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said Democratic leaders cut short a meeting with President, saying Trump had a meltdown over the vote. Pelosi said the president did not expect this margin of the votes.
I think that vote, the size of the vote, more than 2-1 of the Republicans voted to oppose what the president did, probably got to the president because he was shaken up by it. And that's why we couldn't continue in the meeting, because he was just not relating to the reality of it.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said President Trump called Pelosi a third-rate politician in the White House meeting. The Democrats walked out of the meeting in protest. Now moving on, Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa says people in occupied Kashmir are bravely facing Indian atrocities. Visiting troops at the line of control, Bajwa said Pakistan will never abandon Kashmiris in their struggle against occupation forces. He said Pakistan will continue to play its role at every cost. Bajwa further said was also briefed about ceasefire violations by Indian forces targeting population across the line of control. Pakistan's envoy to the United Nations, Melia Lodi, has said a peaceful resolution of Kashmir issue is essential for South Asia's stability. Addressing at the UNGA's first committee, she said India's unilateral aggression is a direct threat to region, especially to Pakistan. The Pakistani representative said occupied Kashmir's illegal annexation violates UNSC resolutions and poses a grave risk to regional peace. She said Pakistan has always shown restraint and responsibility in avoiding an arms race in South Asia. Lodi said Islamabad cannot remain oblivious to the evolving security dynamics in our immediate neighborhood. The news just in is that Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have arrived in eastern city of Lahore. As you can see the live visuals coming from Lahore, and Chief Minister of Punjab Province Sardar Usman Buzdar has received the royal couple. As you can see, the royal couple has arrived in the eastern city of Lahore, the capital city of Punjab Province, and Chief Minister along with the Governor of Punjab have received the couple upon their arrival, and they've been given a warm welcome. Today is the fourth day of the royal couple during their visit, and they are visiting the historic city of Lahore, and upon their arrival, as you can see, have been received by Chief Minister Punjab Sardar Usman Buzdar and Governor Punjab Mr. Mohammed Sarwar, and that was the latest that the royal couple has just arrived in Lahore, and they would be spending today in Lahore visiting different important historic places. Now moving on, British and EU negotiators say there is a possibility of last-minute Brexit deal at a key EU summit in Brussels today. Negotiators from the two sides worked late last night in the hope to present a mutually agreeable divorce deal. At a late-night briefing, EU negotiator Michel Barnier said that there has been good progress during the talks and work is ongoing. London chief negotiator Stephen Barclay said the two sides are close to a breakthrough, but officials say they are still trying to iron out details on keeping the British-ruled Northern Ireland under the European umbrella. It is also not clear if the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be able to sell the deal at home. Russia says it will host dozens of African leaders next week at the Black Sea resort of Sochi to reassert its influence on the continent. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said heads of 35 African countries will attend the first Africa-Russia summit. Peskov said the Kremlin has a lot to offer in terms of mutually beneficial cooperation to African countries. The summit will be co-chaired by Egyptian President and African Union Chairman Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Moscow was a crucial player on the continent in the Soviet era, backing independence movements and training a generation of African leaders. The leaders of the former Soviet client states like Angola and Ethiopia will also be at the forum. Sudan has announced a permanent ceasefire in the country's war zones, but a key rebel group has refused to comply, accusing Khartoum of bombing their territory amid government-led peace talks in Juba City. The South Sudanese city of Juba is holding talks between a new Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdouk's government and the rebel groups. Peace talks are being held in the presence of heads of state from Ethiopia, Egypt, Rwanda, Uganda, and South Sudan. The Sudan People's Liberation Movement North, in a statement, said the government forces attacked the South Kordofan region. It also accused the government of supporting the Arab Hawazma tribe against other tribes in the area. Responding to the statement, Sudan's government said it has called for an immediate halt to fighting around the country. Protesters set cars on fire and threw petrol bombs at the police as demonstrators rocked Barcelona for a third day. This comes amid intensifying unrest sparked by the sentencing of Catalan separatist leaders for a failed independence bid. Peaceful demonstration throughout Wednesday deteriorated after nightfall into clashes between police and protesters. In some places, police charged at protesters and fired foam projectiles. Catalan President Quintorra called for an immediate halt to the violent clashes. He warned the clashes were harming the image of the separatist movement. Emergency services said 52 people have been treated in course of a day in Barcelona and other towns. 4 people were detained without bail for their role in skirmishes. Around 150 women have staged a demonstration outside Google's London office in defiance of a police ban on climate protests. The women accuse Google of helping climate change deniers. This report has the details.
Google's got the power. Google's got the power.
Last week, a leading British newspaper, The Guardian, ran a report saying Google had made substantial contributions to climate change deniers in Washington. Taking notice of the accusation, some mothers staged a nurse-in outside Google's London offices.
Look, we know that politicians and other big corporations will continue to destroy our planet for profit. We know that they will continue to do that. And all we can do is keep going to them with our babies, with our families, and asking them to stop doing that.
A parallel protest was also launched at the premises of Google's subsidiary YouTube. Responding to the article in The Guardian, the American tech giant said, Google is not the only company which works with organizations it disagrees with.
We are sending this message anywhere where we can see that there are things happening, there are people in power with influence that can make a difference, and we need everyone to come together.
London police have arrested over 1,600 people since Extinction Rebellion launched a new wave of civil disobedience on the 7th of October. But there are no reports of any police action against these nursing mothers.
Thousands of Dutch farmers on tractors have blocked traffic in the Netherlands. The farmers are protesting against attempts to blame them for nitrogen pollution. Convoys of tractors set out early morning, first for the city of Utrecht and later to The Hague. Over 375 kilometers of roads were blocked as the move caused long traffic jams across the country. This is the third time the farmers have mounted a day of protest. Their campaign was launched after a court ruling in May found the Netherlands in violation of European emission rules. Livestock farming, construction and transportation are leading causes of nitrogen pollution. But farmers say they have made substantial efforts to cut the emissions. In Afghanistan, the Independent Election Commission has said the transfer of the voters' information from biometric devices to Commission's data center has been completed. The announcement comes out of widespread criticism by contesting candidates over the Commission's lack of transparency and incompetence. The Commission spokesperson said fake votes will be invalidated in the second phase. The Commission said it has processed over 23,000 forms of digital results over 1.7 million voters' IDs. It said preliminary results will be announced after the elimination of bogus votes. All candidates have accused the Election Commission of fraud to benefit President Ashraf Ghani. Afghan presidential polls were held on September the 28th and results are expected on October the 19th. It's time for a short break, but coming up next in a bulletin. Only 15% of population has access to power. And Duke and Duchess arriving in Lahore today. Welcome back. A story of a sad and unfortunate incident in Saudi Arabia. 35 pilgrims have been killed and 4 others injured in a traffic accident in the holy city of Medina. The police official said the victims were mainly of Asian and Arab origin. He said the accident happened after a passenger bus crashed into a heavy vehicle. Saudi state media says the injured have been transferred to Al-Hamna hospital in Medina. Five people have been killed after a 6.4 magnitude earthquake jolted Mindanao Island in Philippines. City officials said dozens were injured following a landslide and damage to infrastructure. The strong quake rattled North Cotabato and nearby provinces. The earthquake forced people to flee malls and buildings and hospital patients to be evacuated. Another 5.3 magnitude earthquake hit Davao Oriental province. The seismic agency said it was not an aftershock and no damage has been reported so far. Only 15% of Madagascar's 26 million inhabitants have access to electricity. This is a statistic that hasn't changed in 8 years and is unlikely to change for a long time because of corruption, mismanagement, and politics. This report has the details.
Much of Madagascar's national energy mix still depends on crumbling colonial-era power plants. It's no wonder then that the World Bank ranks it 184 out of 190 countries in terms of access to electricity. But Madagascar's political leaders still shy away from costly construction projects which may drag on beyond their own 5-year term. The country is also rife with power theft which overloads the dilapidated electrical infrastructure.
People connect wherever they want without permission, and the transformers can't take the overload. An installation can only hold 3 amps, for example, and there are people doing welding, using hair appliances and other high voltage devices. Cables from their homes can overheat and burn.
Even those with access to electricity say they suffer frequent blackouts.
When I used to buy electricity from the power company, whenever we watch TV, it would always cut out when it got interesting. Whereas since we have been using solar panels, we can all use our devices easily.
Now the private sector is stepping in with a 120 megawatt hydroelectric power project. The country also gets 2,800 hours of sunlight annually, and the government is relying on it to provide solar power to 70% of Madagascar's citizens by the year 2030. But for that, they'll have to put the project before their own political concerns.
The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have arrived in Lahore on their 4th day of their visit to Pakistan. Prince William and his wife Kate Middleton earlier travelled the foothills of Hindu Kush mountain range. Find more on Duke and Duchess of Cambridge activities in this report.
traditional headgear and clapping to the music, Britain's Prince William and his wife Kate met a tiny animist tribe in northern Pakistan. The royal couple met with locals in the Chitral Valley and spent time with children. Clad in colorful robes, girls sang traditional folk songs to the royals. Locals were excited to meet Duke and Duchess.
When I saw the pictures of her with different places in Chitral, so I was really very fascinating to saw her and like that. So I think it's amazing and I'm really very happy.
The couple then went sightseeing the verdant and plunging valleys on foot.
You can go to Europe and you can see the mountains in Europe and the Alps. You can go to New Zealand and see stunning scenery there as well. But this is of a scale that I've never seen before, or you, have you, Catherine? And the Himalayas are beautiful.
Prince William showed his concern when briefed on climate change impact on Pakistan's glaciers.
The scientific community is very concerned and very worried about how much it's retreated and the impacts that's going to have on the villages and the communities downstream who rely on all this water. He was saying that 1.6 billion people rely on this water behind us.
Local residents believe the royal visit will boost international tourism to Pakistan, especially Kailash Valley.
On the highs of the business world now, Pakistan and Egypt have agreed to work out measures for capturing untapped economic potential and promoting bilateral trade. The decision was taken at the first meeting of the Pakistan-Egypt Joint Working Group on Trade held in the capital. The two countries agreed to enhance trade in sectors including textile, agriculture, surgical instruments and leather products. An MOU was also signed between Trade Development Authority of Pakistan and Egyptian Commercial Service. The Pakistani delegation was led by Secretary Commerce Ahmed Sukera, while First Under Secretary of Egyptian Commercial Service Ahmed Antar represented Egypt. The IMF says rising debt levels in Africa pose an increasing risk to the region's economies. IMF's capital markets representative Ivan Papageorgiou said more than a dozen countries are either in distress or at high risk of debt distress. Papageorgiou said in a lot of low-income countries, the issue of debt is becoming more pressing. He said major lending countries out of Europe have become the dominant source of official bilateral credit for many low-income countries. Those creditors should consider the benefits of adopting sustainable lending rules. The IMF also predicted that Russian federal budget will be in deficit again in 2020. Italy has approved a new tax on digital companies, including US tech giants. This will oblige companies such as Facebook, Google, and Amazon to pay a 3% levy on internet transactions. Washington has repeatedly said the levy unfairly targeted US firms. Italy's move could draw threats of retaliation from the US as well. The levy is due to be introduced from next year. Indonesia and South Korea have signed a deal agreeing to boost bilateral trade between the two countries to $30 billion by the year 2020. The agreement was signed at the end of negotiations in Jakarta. The Indonesian Trade Ministry said this move clears the way for the formal signing of a free trade and investment accord. Indonesian Trade Minister Lukita said the agreement will be signed at the ASEAN summit next month. Lukita said Indonesia will see a 20% trade growth with South Korea next year compared with last year. Indonesian exports include coal, copper, rubber and tin, and it buys synthetic rubber, flat steel products, electronic circuits and yarns from Seoul. Asian stock markets have traded mixed following cautious trade overnight in the US and Europe. Despite hazy trend, shares in Hong Kong have risen with Hang Seng's index climbing over 0.5%. Shares of property developers have also jumped after the city's leader Carrie Lam announced measures to ease housing shortage. Mainland Chinese markets have also showed mixed scores with both Shanghai Composite and Shenzhen Component going down. Japan's Nikkei 225 has inched up while South Korea's Kospi has plunged. With a drop in material sector, Australia's ASX 200 index has also slipped. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching. For further updates, stay tuned to Indus News.